the ultimate end of the Christian life. And when all things are made subject to him, 1 Corinthians 15:28. When all things are made subject to him, then the Son himself will also be subject to him, who subjects all things to him, that God will be all in all. God will be all in all. In 1 Corinthians 10:31, therefore, whether you eat or drink or do anything else, do all for the glory of God. This is the message we really try to push for the third order. This is the whole point. This should be the whole point of our existence. Whether you eat or drink or do anything. Now, eating and drinking is absolutely necessary. If you don't do it, you're going to die. Right? You got to eat, you got to drink. You don't have to do too much of it, but you have to eat and you have to drink. And if you don't do it, you'll be negligent because you're going to die from it. So that's the most basic thing you can possibly do. And he says, whether you do that or anything else, do it all for the glory of God. That dispels right away this idea of I can live 1 foot in the world and 1 foot out. I can try to eat my cake and eat it too. How does that go? Cut my cake and eat it too. Have my cake and cut it too. The friars all make fun of me because I always say those things, but I can never. They don't. I'm mentally slow when it comes to those sayings. Ephesians 1:4. As he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blemish in his sight to love. See, it's not so much that we're called just to get to heaven. If you really think about it, the majority of us have an idea that our goal is just to do good enough so we get to heaven. That doesn't make any sense. Because nobody tries to just, well, so I guess some people do, but when you're trying to win a marathon, you're not just going to simply try to get the best kind of shoes you can and take it as easy as you just do the bare minimum of exercise to be able to finish the thing. Because you'll never win, you'll just finish it, right? But you may not finish it. But our reward is so much greater than just a marathon. But people on earth, they'll spend months and months and months running 20 miles multiple times to try to win a marathon. There was a guy in the neighborhood where I grew up, and this guy was super skinny. He looked like his legs were rubber, and he was just running all the time. And I didn't know when I was a kid. I just thought, that's weird. This guy's always like running around. He just looks like a piece of rubber, like running around wherever he's going. He's on the highway and he's over here. Well, he must have been a marathon runner. And he was probably a really good one because this guy would be running all the time. He wasn't like going for a jog after work. It was like his job was to run around like a piece of rubber all day long, every day. You just saw him going all over the place. Well, he was probably competing. He was probably somebody who's actually competing because he wants to get a prize. Well, ours is a prize. Heaven. There's actually a prize, but we can't even fathom what that is, so we really don't think too much about our prize. What we do is we just know it's going to be nice and everything and try to hang on to this as long as we can until we have to go there. That's the way we think of it. We really don't have a very... If we knew what heaven was, or we at least believed God and what he says about heaven, then we would be racing for it. And we would be struggling for it and striving for it. But we're not doing that. Do you see? Even though all of Scripture talks about how the magnitude of what it must be like to be there and how it never ever ends. But this is why he asks us to be holy and without blemish in his sight. In love. To love. Do you see? Because it's the essence of what it means. It's the reason why we were created. He predestined us to be adopted through Jesus Christ as his sons, according to the purpose of his will, until the praise of the glory of his age, that is in heaven, with which he has favored us in his beloved Son, for the praise for the praise of his glory. This is a very profound. Ephesians 1:4-6 and 14. It's one of those scripture passages. Mix a bunch of them together. Royal Marine, one of the spiritual theologians that I really like, he says this: hence, the sanctification of one's own soul is not the ultimate end of the Christian life. And it would seem that that's what we think it is. We think that because remember, we put ourselves at the center. The ultimate goal is that we become holy. No, the ultimate goal is not that you become holy. Beyond this is the glory of the blessed Trinity. God deserves to be glorified. He created you only for that. He didn't create you just for you. He created you for Him. Do you see? If you're going to become perfect, you have to fulfill the purpose of your being. And it's to fulfill something for Him. You were made for Him, not for you. Do you see? Beyond this is the glory of the blessed Trinity, which is the absolute end of all that exists. That's why you can't have the stupid mindset that we have today that God has to stay out of certain things. Like government. God can't stay out of government. The government serves a purpose. It's in they're given authority by God. So to leave them out, that's why you get all the silly nonsense that happens in government. Anyways, all thought, and although the truth is fundamental, and although the truth is so fundamental for those who comprehend the divine transcendence, it nevertheless does not appear to dominate the lives of the saints until rather late, when the soul is transformed through the love and the unity of God. I'll read it again because this is when in the transforming union the soul is fully identified with God. So beyond this, or go back, beyond this is the glory of the blessed Trinity, which is the absolute end of all that exists. And although this truth is so fundamental for those who comprehend divine transcendence, it nevertheless does not appear to dominate the lives of the saints until rather late, that is, in their life. They don't understand it until later on, how important this is. It happens when the soul is transformed through love in the unity of God. That's why I'm trying to force you to make meditations. Until you enter into that intimacy with God, you won't even start to understand Him. And once you do, your whole life changes. And that's what He wants us. He wants all of our lives to change. From being mostly worldly to a bit spiritual, to very spiritual who has to stay in the world for a bit. Do you see the difference? You'll never get to that if you don't pray. And I don't mean just doing all your repetitious prayers. Those are fine to do. I'm not bashing those prayers. But intimate prayer with God. If you don't do it, you don't arrive. And He's always a mystery to you. And because He's a mystery, you're always on the verge of losing your faith. Because you're more attached to the world than you are to heaven. Or you're more aligned with the world than you are with heaven. Do you understand the difference? To be more aligned with the world means this is where the stuff is that you understand. It's where you find your importance. It's where you get your dignity from. To be more aligned with heaven is to understand that place, to long for that place. How do you know the difference? When you're afraid. You're afraid of the future. You're afraid of all the financial stuff. You're afraid of your health. You get paralyzed often in these constant worries and anxieties. You're attached to this place. The servants of God trust Him because they know that God, if He can take care of everything, He can take care of me. Do you see? We go back. So that's the transforming union of God. When in the transforming union, the soul is fully identified with God, only Christ and Mary from the first moment of their existence, realize this glorification of God, which is the terminus of all sanctity on this earth. They're the only ones that arrived at their inception, right? We have to work through it and attain to it through cooperation with God. Our Lady was given a very great gift of being full of God's grace from the very beginning. She always cooperated with God, always. We have to learn how to cooperate with God's grace so that we can be more and more filled with His grace. See, so the difference is Our Lady at her conception was just completely open and ready for grace. We are like this. We get baptized, and then finally through a life of prayer, we start opening up the soul. Because at baptism, your soul gets completely full of the grace of God. It's that much. Okay, it's just like a little seed. And it's even in canon law, it's referred to as a seed. You receive the seed of faith. And then through prayer and the sacraments, especially the sacraments, but also our cooperation, our disposition, it starts breaking open that seed until it can receive more grace. Disposition. But this has to do with your cooperation with God. And the more that happens, the more you can be filled with that grace. The more you enter into this, the more it starts opening up completely until you're transformed into this union with God. It has to do with your cooperation, your disposition. Do you see? Nothing should so preoccupy the soul which aspires to sanctity as the constant forgetfulness of self. Now, some of you married people are thinking, if my husband or wife would just hear that, they would just forget themselves. That's what I desire. They'll just think of me, basically, is what they're trying to say. That no, it has to start with you, not with your spouse. Nothing should so preoccupy the soul which aspires to sanctity as the constant forgetfulness of self and the intention to do all for the glory of God. In one way, of course, I don't resent the saints or think they're a problem, but you see in Catholics today, like, for example, you've got you have such a holy example in, is it Wilhelmina, Sister Wilhelmina, who God has allowed to be incorrupt. But the problem I see with Wilhelmina, which there isn't a problem with her, obviously, is that everyone wants to be like, but she was holy. Yeah. But because she was holy, it's like, at least somebody's doing it, so they don't have to do it. Like, no. The Wilhelminas want you to join the ranks, okay? I mean, she's supposed to spurn you on and say, look, it's possible. Okay, it's possible. I'm here. I'll pray for you. It's possible. Not just say, look, she did it. That's great. That's kind of where we are. That's why I get sick of Wilhelmina. Not sick of Wilhelmina, but the people like, you see that they're missing why she's incorrupt. They're missing how she arrived at that. Day after day, she entered into an intimate relationship with our dear blessed Lord. And she became holy. She's to show us to do that, not just to be thankful that she did that. Now I don't have to worry about it because I know that somebody did it. Do you see the difference? At the summit of the Mount of Perfection, St. John of the Cross has printed these words. Here, on this mountain, swells only the honor and the glory of God. When you enter into self-forgetfulness, on that mountain of holiness will swell only the honor and the glory of God. You're not too interested in you anymore. And you'll be able to tell, one of the ways you're able to tell when you're starting to move up that mountain is when you're indifferent to praise or criticism. You see? Whether they praise you or they criticize you. It doesn't matter. You know that you've simply got your task to do. God's your object. They can do or say what they want. They can like you or they can hate you. You're just trying to do what He wants you to do, whether they like you or they hate you. I'm not paying attention to them, and I'm not paying attention to them. You just keep going. Do you see? You're going up a mountain.